Welcome, friends, and let me regale you with a tale of love, deception, and the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit, set against the backdrop of the bustling streets of New York City. Enjoy the story. The bustling streets of New York City were alive with the sounds of honking cars and chattering pedestrians. In the middle of it all was the vibrant outdoor market, a kaleidoscope of colors and aromas that assaulted the senses. Sarah Reynolds weaved through the crowd, her arms laden with bags overflowing with fresh fruits she had just purchased. Peaches, apples, oranges. She had gone a little overboard at the produce stands, but she couldn't resist the alluring displays. As she looked around for a place to set her haul down and call for a taxi, a young man came barreling out of a nearby store, nearly knocking her over. Fruits went flying, and bags split open, their contents spilling onto the dirty sidewalk. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," the man exclaimed, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Let me help you with that." He quickly crouched down and began gathering the scattered produce, depositing it back into the torn bags. Sarah couldn't help but notice his chiseled features and warm, friendly eyes as he looked up at her with an apologetic smile. "I just had another argument with my old man and stormed out without paying attention," he explained sheepishly. "I'm Mike, by the way, Mike Decker. And I swear I'm not some creep or anything, despite nearly mowing you down." Sarah let out a melodious laugh that seemed to brighten the entire street. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Mike. I'm Sarah. And don't worry, I could tell you weren't a creep." As they finished collecting the last of the fruits, Mike insisted on helping Sarah get her bags to her car since it was parked nearby. She tried to protest, not wanting to be a bother, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Little did Sarah know, this chance encounter would change both of their lives forever. Mike couldn't believe his luck as he loaded the heavy bags into the trunk of his beat-up Honda Civic. Sarah was easily the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on, with her long chestnut tresses, piercing green eyes, and a smile that could melt even the coldest of hearts. As they settled into the car, Mike made sure to drive well under the speed limit, taking the long way to Sarah's address in the hopes of spending more time with her. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. "So, Sarah," he began, flashing her a winning smile, "any chance a gorgeous girl like you would be free for a movie this Saturday night? Dinner, too, if you're interested." To his delight, Sarah returned the smile, causing his heart to flutter. "You know what, Mike? I think I'd like that." They chatted amicably about their interests and hobbies, and before long, Mike was pulling up to the stately manor that Sarah called home. His jaw nearly hit the floor when he saw the sprawling estate, complete with meticulously manicured grounds and a fountain in the courtyard. "You live here?" he asked incredulously. Sarah shrugged, seeming almost embarrassed by the opulence. "My parents just bought it a few months ago, but I'm not really one to flaunt money or anything." As Mike walked her to the imposing front door, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern. Her family was obviously loaded. What were the chances they would approve of their daughter dating a regular guy like him? Little did he know, the truth was far more complicated than he could ever imagine. "Dad, you'll never believe the girl I met today," Mike exclaimed as he burst through the door of the modest two-bedroom apartment he shared with his father, Tom. Tom Decker looked up from the recliner where he had been watching the evening news, an amused smile playing across his weathered features. "Oh yeah? Do tell." Mike launched into an animated retelling of his encounter with Sarah at the market, his eyes lighting up as he described her beauty, her kindness, and the undeniable connection he had felt with her. "And get this, she agreed to go out with me on Saturday," Mike gushed, running a hand through his shaggy brown hair. "Can you believe it? A total babe like that, interested in little old me." Tom chuckled at his son's excitement. "She must be one hell of a special girl to have you so worked up. Where does this vision of loveliness live?" Mike's smile faltered slightly as he recalled the opulent mansion. "That's the thing, Dad. When I dropped her off, it was at this crazy huge house, a full-on mansion. Her parents must be loaded." Concern creased Tom's brow. As a struggling single father who worked long hours at the auto repair shop, he knew all too well about class differences and the strain they could put on relationships. "Now don't you go getting ahead of yourself," he cautioned. "For all we know, she could just be renting a room there or something. Don't make assumptions about her family's money. I guess you're right, Mike conceded, though his defenses were already up. Parents with money often looked down on blue-collar guys like him. If Sarah's family was as wealthy as their house suggested, gaining their approval was going to be an uphill battle. Still, he had felt that spark, that inexplicable connection with Sarah. She was different, special, and he was determined to do whatever it took to make her his. The week leading up to his date with Sarah was interminable for Mike. He spent hours agonizing over what to wear, fretting about making a good impression. When Saturday finally arrived, he showed up at the theater 45 minutes early, wringing his hands nervously as he waited for Sarah to arrive. The moment she stepped out of her sleek black Mercedes, Mike's breath caught in his throat. She looked like a vision in a form-fitting red dress that hugged her curves to perfection. A shy smile played across her lips as she approached, and Mike felt his heart flip in his chest. "Hey there," she greeted him warmly. "Sorry if I kept you waiting. Shall we head in?" The movie was a blur for Mike, who found himself completely captivated by the ethereal beauty sitting next to him. He hung on her every word during their conversations, enthralled by her whip-smart intellect and quirky sense of humor. By the time their date rolled into a late dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Mike knew without a doubt that Sarah was the one, his soulmate, his destiny. She was everything he had ever dreamed of, and so much more. As they parted ways that night with a lingering kiss, Mike felt like he was walking on air. He couldn't wait to tell his dad about how incredibly perfect the evening had been. "I'm going to marry that girl someday," he declared dreamily when he got home, not caring how ridiculous he sounded. "She's the one, Dad. I can feel it." Tom looked at his love-struck son with a mixture of amusement and concern. He was happy Mike had found someone special, but proposing marriage after one date? The kid was moving way too fast. "Why don't you take it slow there, slugger?" Tom suggested gently. "You haven't even met her parents yet. Get to know her better first before you go planning your nuptials." But Mike was too blissfully infatuated to heed the voice of reason. His mind was made up. Sarah was his forever girl. Now he just had to find a way to win over her wealthy family. If only he knew what skeletons lurked in their gilded closets. The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of blissful dates, romantic nights, and talking about their future together. With each passing day, Mike fell deeper and deeper in love with the captivating Sarah. 2 months into their fairy tale romance, he could no longer deny the intense feelings swelling in his heart. It was time to make things official and ask for her hand in marriage. Mike had spent weeks agonizing over the perfect ring, finally settling on a stunning princess-cut diamond set in a platinum band. It was extravagant, especially for a mechanic's budget, but he wanted to show Sarah how devoted he was to making her happy. When the big night arrived, Mike took Sarah for a horse-drawn carriage ride through Central Park. As the city's twinkling lights surrounded them and the clip-clop of the horse's hooves provided a romantic soundtrack, he pulled the ring box from his pocket with trembling hands. "Sarah," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "from the moment I literally ran into you at that market, I knew you were someone special. You're beautiful, brilliant, kind, everything I could ever want in a partner. These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life, and I can't imagine spending another day without you by my side forever." Tears shimmered in Sarah's eyes as Mike got down on one knee in the carriage. "Sarah Reynolds, will you make me the luckiest man in the world and become my wife?" A radiant smile spread across her face as she nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mike, 1,000 times, yes!" He slipped the dazzling ring onto her slender finger, then pulled her in for a searing kiss, pouring every ounce of love and devotion into the embrace. When they finally parted, Sarah's eyes shone with pure joy. "I love you so much," she whispered fervently. "This is all I've ever wanted." As they continued their carriage ride, Sarah's expression turned slightly pensive, her brow furrowing. "There's just one thing." Mike felt his heart lurch with dread. "What is it, babe?" She worried her plump lower lip. "Well, you still haven't met my parents. And the truth is, they're complicated. Extremely wealthy and a bit snobbish, if I'm being honest. Swallowing hard, Mike tried to keep his sudden nerves at bay. Hey, it'll be okay. They're going to love me once they get to know me. When can I meet them? They're out of town on another of their endless vacations at the moment, Sarah replied evasively. But I promise as soon as they're back, you'll get to meet them. I just hope they can see what an amazing man you are, like I do. Her warm smile and reassuring kiss did little to settle the pit of worry that had formed in Mike's gut. If Sarah's family was as rich and stuck up as she implied, winning their approval was going to be one hell of an uphill battle. But she was the love of his life. He would walk through fire if that's what it took to make her his wife. No matter what her parents threw at him, Mike was determined to prove his worth. In the weeks after the proposal, Mike grew increasingly bothered by the lingering questions surrounding Sarah's family. Why was she so hesitant to discuss them or arrange a meeting? He knew she had mentioned their wealth, but could they really be that insufferable? And then there was the nagging issue of her last name, Reynolds. It didn't match the prestigious Vanderbilt name inscribed on the gleaming gates of the mansion where he had dropped her off on their first date. He had brushed it off at first, assuming she had taken her mother's maiden name or something, but the more he thought about it, the more it ate away at him. What if Sarah's family wasn't who she said they were? What if she had been lying this whole time about her background? The thought made him physically ill, but Mike knew there was only one way to put his doubts to rest. He had to see the truth for himself. And so he began hatching a plan, as crazy as it seemed. If Sarah's family was out of town, that meant the mansion would be empty, yes? All he had to do was find a way inside to look around, to get a feel for who these people really were. With a few simple supplies from a costume shop, Mike had his answer. He would sneak into the house disguised as a delivery man, using the age-old ruse to gain access. Then he could poke around, get the lay of the land, and put this whole mess to rest once and for all. His dad warned him he was crazy, that he was crossing lines that could land him in serious legal trouble. But Mike was too consumed by his need for answers to listen to reason. He was going to find out the truth about Sarah's family, one way or another. Mike's palms were slick with nervous sweat as he approached the imposing front gates of the Vanderbilt mansion. Clutching a cheap plastic delivery bin as his flimsy prop, he took a steadying breath and pressed the call button on the intercom. "Delivery for the Vanderbilt residence," he announced in his best official-sounding tone when the static-laced voice crackled through the speaker. There was a pause, then the wrought iron gates began to swing open with an ominous creak. Showtime. With his baseball cap tugged low and his head down, Mike hurried up the immaculate cobblestone driveway towards the house's arched front entrance. His heart thundered in his ears, a mix of adrenaline and trepidation coursing through his veins. What if he got caught? This was almost certainly illegal, not to mention a surefire way to torpedo any chance of earning Sarah's family's approval. But he had to know the truth, had to see with his own eyes what was really going on. The front door was unlocked, allowing Mike to slip inside with ease. He found himself in an opulent marble foyer, rich mahogany accents and priceless artworks adorning the walls. This place just screamed old money, and lots of it. Clutching his prop delivery bin tightly, Mike began creeping through the cavernous home, his eyes wide as he tried to drink in every luxurious detail. This was exactly the kind of place he had imagined Sarah's wealthy family living in. But as he turned a corner into what appeared to be a sitting room, Mike froze in his tracks. There, just a few feet away, with a feather duster in her hand, was the unmistakable figure of Sarah herself. Dressed in a plain black skirt and white blouse, with her hair tied back in a no-nonsense bun. She looked up at the sound of his footsteps, and her eyes went wide with shock and panic. "Mike!" she sputtered, clearly horrified to see him there. "What are you doing here?" Before he could respond, the sound of a nearby door opening caused them both to start. Mike's blood turned to ice in his veins as two well-dressed, middle-aged people strode into the room, a man and a woman he could only assume were the owners of the house. Sarah's family, her real family. The man's brow furrowed as he took in the strange scene before him. "You girl!" he barked at Sarah, his voice thick with disdain. Who is this person, and what is he doing in my home? Sarah opened and closed her mouth, looking like a deer caught in headlights as realization dawned on Mike. The horrible, inescapable truth crashed over him like a tsunami. Sarah wasn't the wealthy heiress she had claimed. She was the help, a maid working in this house that so clearly didn't belong to her family. She had lied to him about everything, from her very first words. Searing betrayal cut through Mike like a white-hot knife. His legs nearly gave out from the shock of it all as he met Sarah's devastated gaze. She had played him for a fool, and he had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. His world was crashing down around him, and he had no one to blame but himself. Mike felt like he might be physically ill as the weight of Sarah's deception threatened to crush him. He had been so incredibly stupid, taking her lies at face value and getting in this deep without a second thought. His mind was whirling, a maelstrom of anger, confusion, and bone-deep hurt. How could she have done this to him? After everything, after he had loved her with every fiber of his being and planned a life with her. The next few minutes were a blur as Mike somehow found the strength to flee the mansion, ignoring Sarah's desperate pleas for him to stop and talk to her. He couldn't bear to look at her, to be anywhere near the source of this gut-wrenching betrayal. By the time he reached his dad's apartment, Mike was an emotional wreck, his face streaked with angry tears. He tried to explain what had happened, but the words kept catching in his throat, turning into unintelligible sobs. Tom instantly went into protective father mode, pulling his son into a comforting embrace as Mike's anguished sobs racked his body. "Take it easy, son," Tom soothed, his brow creased with fatherly concern. "Just take a few deep breaths and tell me what's going on." It took several long minutes for Mike to regain enough composure to choke out the truth. The whole sordid truth about Sarah's betrayal, about how she had lied and deceived him from the very beginning. As the words tumbled out in a torrent of heartbreak and fury, Tom's expression morphed from shock to outrage. "That lying little," he growled, his hands balling into fists. "I'll wring her scrawny neck, pulling a stunt like that. You hear me, Mike? She's not worth another second of your thoughts or tears." But Mike knew his father's bluster was just a front to mask his own anger and pain on his son's behalf. Because despite Tom's bravado, they had both been taken for fools by Sarah's web of lies and deception. A heavy silence hung between them, punctuated only by Mike's ragged breathing as he tried to collect himself. Just when Tom opened his mouth to offer some gruff words of comfort, a soft knock sounded at the door. Both men froze, their heads whipping towards the sound. Mike felt his stomach drop, a cold sweat prickling his skin. It couldn't be. Could it? "Michael?" a tremulous voice called out from the other side of the door. "Mike, please. It's me, Sarah. I need to explain everything to you, to both of you." Rage boiled in Mike's veins at the sound of that voice, that deceitful siren's call that had so thoroughly shattered his heart. He moved to yell at her to get lost, to never show her lying face around him again. But Tom put a hand on his son's heaving chest, his eyes filled with a stern resolve. "Let her in, Mike. If this little nutjob thinks she can justify what she did, I want to hear it." With a resigned nod, Mike yanked open the door, revealing Sarah standing there with red-rimmed eyes and a complexion as pale as a ghost. She looked utterly distraught, wringing her hands anxiously as she met his smoldering glare. "You've got 5 minutes," Mike spat, his tone laced with venom. "Then I never want to see or hear from you again, you understand?" Sarah flinched as if he had struck her, but she gave a shaky nod of acknowledgement. "I understand. And I'm so sorry, Mike. You have to believe I never meant to hurt you like this." As she launched into her explanation, neither man could have predicted the jaw-dropping bombshell that was about to drop. Sarah took a deep, steadying breath, steeling herself to finally unveil the truth she had kept so carefully guarded for her entire life. I'm not who you think I am," she began haltingly, her eyes darting between Mike's thunderous expression and Tom's penetrating stare. "The Vanderbilts, the family who owns that mansion, they're not my family, at least not in the way I led you to believe." She drew in another fortifying breath before continuing in a small, pained voice. "When I was born, Robert, he told my mother I had died during childbirth. He lied to her, and then abandoned me, leaving me in a dumpster like garbage because he didn't want me around as an heir to jeopardize his inheriting my mom's family fortune. The words hung heavy in the air, a sickening admission that left both Mike and Tom gaping in abject horror. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she pushed on with her gut-wrenching tale. Another family found me and took me in, raised me as their own without knowing the truth of my origins, she explained, her voice thick with emotion. It wasn't until a few months ago that I uncovered the real story through some old documents and started piecing everything together. Mike felt his anger rapidly dissolving, replaced by a gnawing ache of pity and sorrow for the woman before him. She had been an innocent victim all along, her life upended by one man's despicable greed and cruelty. "So you took that job at the mansion," he murmured, the full picture becoming clear. "You were trying to get close to your birth mother, to expose that bastard for what he did." Sarah nodded jerkily, swiping at the tears that had started streaking down her cheeks. "I just wanted her to know the truth, to have the chance at a relationship with her real daughter that was stolen from us. I never imagined—" Her gaze found Mike's, swimming with remorse. "I never imagined I would fall in love in the process, hurt someone I cared about so deeply." The anguish in her eyes was palpable, her regret hanging like a dense shroud around them all. Mike surprised himself by feeling his own defenses crumbling in the wake of her heart-wrenching confession. This poor woman had been to hell and back, all because of one man's depravity and lies. And rather than lash out, rather than seek vengeance, she had only wanted to connect with the mother who never knew she was alive. Slowly, Mike crossed the small room until he was standing before Sarah. He cupped her tear-stained cheek, his thumb brushing across the soft skin as their eyes locked. "I'm so sorry, babe," he murmured, his own voice catching with emotion. "Sorry you had to go through all that. Sorry I didn't give you a chance to explain before flying off the handle like a jackass." Sarah's lip trembled, fresh tears spilling forth. Can you ever forgive me for lying to you at first, even if my intentions changed?" In response, Mike simply pulled her into a fierce embrace, cradling her shuddering body against his own as she wept. Over her shoulder, he met his father's gaze, seeing a mixture of sadness and newfound respect reflected back at him. They had both misjudged this woman, this survivor who had overcome such unimaginable cruelty with grace and poise. But Mike knew in that moment that he didn't just love Sarah. He admired her, respected her strength more than anyone he had ever known. And as he held her close, stroking her hair soothingly, he made a silent vow. He would stand by her side through this, would be her rock as she finally confronted the demons of her past once and for all. Because this remarkable woman deserved to have someone fight for her after too many years of being tossed aside and betrayed. In the aftermath of Sarah's gut-wrenching revelation, the weeks that followed were a whirlwind of confrontation, chaos, and the long-overdue unraveling of the Vanderbilt family's sordid secrets. Despite Mike's initial misgivings, Sarah had resolved to take the high road, refusing to pursue legal action or public shaming against her monstrous biological father. Her only wish was for her birth mother, Emily, to finally know the truth about what had happened to her baby all those years ago. With Mike's support and Tom steadfastly by their side, Sarah had arranged a sit-down with Emily, dreading yet yearning for the chance to connect with the woman who had been cruelly robbed of her child's existence. The meeting had been every bit as emotionally charged as they expected, with Emily dissolving into heartbroken sobs upon learning of her husband's unforgivable deception and betrayal. She had clung to Sarah like a lifeline, her anguished cries echoing through the opulent mansion as decades of lies and tragedy finally came to light. In the end, it was Emily's decision to have Robert arrested on charges of child abandonment and endangerment, her rage as a mother overshadowing any residual feelings for the man who had so callously discarded their daughter. The high-profile scandal made international headlines, with the public equally appalled and captivated by the disturbing revelations about the wealthy Vanderbilt patriarch. As for Sarah, she adamantly refused to seek monetary restitution or attempt to claim her stake in the vast family fortune. Her only request of her birth mother was for the chance to finally know her, to build the mother-daughter relationship they had been so cruelly robbed of. Emily, still reeling from the truth, but embracing her second chance with a ferocious determination, agreed without hesitation. She sold the opulent mansion, ridding herself of the tainted reminder of her former life with Robert, and used the proceeds to start anew with Sarah in a more modest home nearby. And through it all, Mike stood by Sarah's side in resolute devotion. His anger towards her over the initial deception had been eclipsed by a profound admiration for her poise and resilience in the face of such a horrific betrayal. She was the strongest, bravest woman he knew, and he loved her more with each passing day. Which was why, when the dust finally settled nearly 6 months later, he decided to finally make things official once more. This time, however, there would be no deceptions or surprises as he planned his proposal. It was a beautiful spring evening when Mike gathered Sarah's newly reconnected family, along with his dad Tom, for a small outdoor dinner on the patio of Emily's new home. As the candles flickered and the string lights twinkled overhead, he took Sarah's hands in his, peridot eyes locking with her emerald gaze. "A wise man once told me not to be so eager to rush into marriage without getting to know someone first," Mike began, flashing his father a grateful smile. "Well, I've gotten to know you, Sarah Reynolds, the good, the bad, the painful truths, and the inner beauty that shines through it all, and I've never loved or admired anyone more." Tears shimmered in Sarah's eyes as Mike slowly lowered himself to one knee, producing the same sparkling diamond ring from all those months ago. "Sarah, would you make me the luckiest man on earth and become my wife? For real this time? No secrets between us?" A radiant smile bloomed across her face as she let out a watery chuckle. "Yes, Mike. 1,000,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and surged up to claim her lips in a searing kiss, as their families looked on with misty smiles and joyful applause. When they finally parted, Sarah's expression was one of pure, unbridled bliss. "I love you so much," she breathed ardently. "Thank you for never giving up on me, on us." Mike cradled her face in his work-roughened hands, staring at her with every ounce of adoration and devotion he possessed. "You're my forever girl, Sarah Reynolds. No matter what curveballs life threw at us, I knew we were meant to be together." And in a shocking twist neither could have seen coming, it was Tom who chose that moment to clear his throat and interject with 4 words that stole the show. "Emily, will you marry me?" The pair's jaws dropped in unison as a beaming Tom dropped to one knee in front of Emily, producing a stunning diamond ring of his own. The older woman's hands flew to her mouth, eyes shining with joy and tears as she gave a vigorous nod. "Yes, oh Tom, yes, of course." As the newly engaged couples embraced amid laughter and happy tears, it was a picture-perfect ending to the long, sordid road that had led them here. A road filled with darkness and deception, but also resilience, forgiveness, and the ultimate triumph of love. Because no matter how twisted the path, fate had a way of righting itself in the most unexpected of ways. And as the two couples reveled in their hard-won happily ever afters, they knew their journey was just beginning.